Hey everybody, it is Chrissy Alger here back for another episode of Freedom Uncensored. So pumped to be here. Now, this is a little bit embarrassing for me. I didn't want to be one of those tossers that holds the mic. That is not why I am holding my mic, guys. I just have got nowhere to put it on my outfit. So I'm going to be one of those tossers that holds the mic for today's episode. So please excuse my tossiness. But, I'd rather you have good sound than you not. So today I want to talk to you about some of the key trends that I'm seeing in the clinics and the salons that have really been excelling in this economic and market fluctuation that we've been witnessing over the last 18 months to 2 years. It's really fascinating to me. And the reason why I want to share with you some of the differences in these salons and clinics is because I want you to really get across some of the strategy that can basically rebuff or protect you from market fluctuations, which is incredibly important. When we are in a situation where there's some circumstances situationally that are going on in the market or in the economy or, in the hair and beauty industry sector or whatever it is, we want to actually build businesses that are, what's the word for it? That can withstand external fluctuations and still continue to thrive. So there is definitely 5 areas of increased capacity or resilience that I've come to witness in clinics that have not suffered during the economic crisis that I want to share with you today. Right. And in the hope that this will help you maybe fine tune some of the areas of your business that need to be looked at so that you are not so vulnerable to things like economic fluctuations and market fluctuations. So, bit of a backstory, and you might have already heard some elements of this, but basically, I've never actually done business not in a crisis, which is a bit strange, right? I opened my skin clinic. I think we were only maybe 18 months into our commercial shop front, maybe even less than that. I think we were, because as you know, I opened in a wellness center. And then, sorry guys, I've just got this really annoying. So let me just kill this notification. Sorry, this is very unprofessional of me, but you guys know me now. I'm more of a real person than I am a polished professional YouTuber. Hang on, let me just bring up my notes again. All right. So I've never actually done business at a time that was like the golden years. People talk about, salons and clinic business owners talk about the time when clients just bought all of the retail and they just signed up to all the packages and the treatment plans. And I'm like, far out, that never actually happened to me. And then fast forward in setting up all of my online businesses. Again, I did all of that in economic crisis post-COVID and during COVID, and ran my skin clinic predominantly during COVID and post-COVID. So the way that I've come to set up businesses has always been in a climate that has been very volatile, and I suppose that sets me up, at a vantage point, because I never got to set up business where it was all easy and flowy and people just purchased and the sun was shining and you didn't have to really try hard to sell things. Like, that has never, ever happened for me. So I think subconsciously, the way that I've come to set up businesses, but also the way that I've mentored and trained people, has been under the most volatile circumstances. And then therefore, the way that I set up and systemize businesses and the way that I coach is just under volatile situations. It's just the way that I do things now, which means that if there ever becomes a golden year's time, who knows, where we have a lot more surplus spending and, people not being so hammered by, what's the word for it that I'm looking for? Just had a bit of a blank. Restricted spending or restricted disposable income. If we ever get to that time again, I don't even know what I would do with myself, to be honest. But I've obviously been able to build businesses that can operate in any market climate, which is awesome. So when, and I suppose to a certain degree, it was a little bit surprising to me, but when we got out of COVID and the economy really started to get a bit gnarly and fluctuate, and the disposable income that people had built during COVID had just completely disappeared, I was starting to hear people in the industry just start to get really vocal about the impacts that that was having on their business. So I was getting a lot of new inquiry come through from business owners that were doing it really hard. They were like, oh my gosh, like all of a sudden I don't have any money. And all of a sudden, the profit's not there. And all of a sudden, the clients aren't spending. And for some reason, we can't get clients committed to treatment plans. And I'm thinking, this is a bit odd. Like, I don't really understand what's going on here. Yes, I understand at face value, we've had a turn in the market and we've had some economic vulnerability start to rear up. And it wasn't just obviously the hair and beauty industry, but it was very much kind of the customer service retail sectors that started to suffer. And I was seeing all of this adversity sort of pop up around me. And don't get me wrong, there were, when I obviously I have the benefit or the vantage point of having a lot of coaching clients, but also a lot of marketing clients as well. So I have access to a lot of data. And as far as my proximity to what's going on in the industry, I've got a lot of exposure to any volatility or market challenges or whatever's going on, just by sheer exposure to all of the businesses that I work with, right? So when I started to see externally to that a lot of noise being created by people in the industry, and then I started getting a lot of people coming to me needing help. When I looked around my coaching program and my marketing agency, and I saw that there weren't as vocal SOS adverse financial situations unfolding in my coaching clients and my marketing clients' businesses, it forced me to think, well, what is it that's different about some of these people compared to the significant demand that I was starting to experience with people needing my help, and just the general vocalization that was going on in the industry. And it was things like, clients started not buying retail anymore. Clients started spacing out appointments. And we did see, obviously, some of that playing out in the businesses that we were coaching. But again, there was there were strategies around that I think meant, and I'll get into those in a minute, it meant that they weren't so adversely affected by the spacing out of the appointments. There was reporting of much higher levels, and we did see this over in the marketing agency, higher levels of cancellation and no-show rates from clients. But then obviously we had strategies to sort of buffer that, and that clients in general were becoming disengaged, mostly because their financial situations were changing. And for a lot of the time, they felt shamed, I suppose, to come to the clinic and say, look, I'm going to have to scale back my appointments, or I'm going to have to leave that for today. Most of the time, they just stopped coming because they didn't want to have those really awkward conversations. So we started seeing, particularly in the hair, skin, and the beauty industry, a lot of change in buying habits and behaviors of our clientele, where for the most part, I found that the businesses that were suffering the most in this department were really lacking in these 5 areas that I'm going to share with you today. So the first area that acted as a repellent, I suppose, to market fluctuations was evidence of proactive marketing planning. So a lot of the businesses that we work with, and particularly in the marketing agency, all of the clients there are actively engaged in new client acquisition. So when some of their existing clients started to drop off or space out, because they were always actively seeking new clientele, it didn't hit them as hard, because they were able to replace the clients that dropped off or disengaged with new clients, right? They were running wait lists of people. At times they had wait lists of demand being generated through their new client acquisition channels. So they were less affected than, say, the businesses that had done no new client acquisition for a number of years, and they were basically trading off the fact that they had a very well established clientele of existing clients that had been consistent. But unfortunately, that all fell away when kind of the impact on the cost of living pressures popped up and the disposable income started to reduce. So those businesses that were actively engaged in new client acquisition were able to replace some of the loss that they experienced of their existing clientele. And that wasn't evident, I suppose, with the businesses that weren't engaging in that, in marketing, to be able to replace the ones that they were losing. So it wasn't just the new client acquisition side of things. Proactive marketing also meant that these clinics and salons had various touch points set up to re-engage lost and lapsed clients, as well as follow-up clients that weren't rebooked, right? And that's just a systemization that definitely I've coached and that we put in place in the clinics to make sure that we're really optimizing or avoiding any white space or appointment gaps. So making sure that we had follow-up procedures for people that for whatever reason didn't rebook. We had follow-up procedures that for whatever reason, people that had missed an appointment and seemed a little bit lost. And then we also had follow-up procedures for clients that for whatever reason had cancelled and then disengaged from their treatments and their service plans. And I went through a lot of that in the last episode that I did around, it's not just about finding new clients, it's actually about keeping the clients that you've already got and having systemized touch points in place to make sure that you're following up with all of those clients. So that was one thing that I noticed, that the clinics that didn't suffer such a hit to their clientele and their appointment books, they actually had these structures in place for new client acquisition as well as re-engagement of clients that had become lost or lapsed. So that was number one. Number two was actually around mindset. So what actually happened was that when the economy flipped and people started losing clients, they started finding business very difficult, they were selling less retail, straight away the flick switched on the panic button and people started freaking out. Right? You've heard me talk about the Debbies, right? The Debbies went into overdrive. It was like, this is really bad. Like, the business is going backwards. My clients aren't rebooking. They're not buying retail anymore. And they kind of sat in a very catastrophic mindset. Whereas the businesses that continued to thrive, even though they noticed some degree of fluctuation in their buying activity, they didn't panic. Right. So they saw it as an opportunity for growth and to fine tune their businesses, because my opinion's always been that economic fluctuations don't actually create problems in your business. They actually highlight vulnerabilities that are already there. So when you've got that mentality, when there's a contraction in the market and all of a sudden there's a problem that arises in your business, you can see that problem more clearly, and it's an opportunity to strategize or fine tune or do something differently. It's not seen as a catastrophic, oh my God, this is really bad. And there's nothing we can do here. We're just victims of the circumstance, right? Which, from a mindset perspective, the differences between the clinics that were doing really well and the ones that weren't, the business owners were adopting a very catastrophic mindset, and also a viewpoint that they were just going to be victims of circumstance and that there was nothing that they could actually do to fix it. Opposed to the flip side of that was that the business owners that didn't suffer so much adversity were solutions focused. They were fine tuning. They saw some of the problems that were arising as an opportunity for growth rather than some catastrophic event that they couldn't recover from. And it was that experience of, yes, definitely there are some parts of this that I can't control, but there's definitely a lot internally that I can control. Right. And then they set about kind of adopting that mindset. And as a result, didn't suffer as much adversity as the clinics that completely hit the panic stations. So the third thing that was evident to me was also in the consultation process. And I did a a YouTube episode a few sessions ago about how the economy actually proved that education didn't sell. And I spent that whole podcast episode or YouTube episode just on the motivational consult method, right? And how that actually helped salon and clinic owners retain their clientele and adjust what they were doing for their clientele to make sure that they didn't disengage. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole nuts and bolts of that. If you want to rewatch that YouTube episode, you can just go back a couple of episodes and listen to all of the motivational consult method and the positives of that and how it did actually lead to clients not disengaging. But in a nutshell, the motivational consult method, when you're asking the right questions, it allows you to adjust treatment planning, home care prescriptions, and everything to make sure that the client is comfortable with what they're doing at the moment with newfound changes in their availability, their budgets, and what they can commit to. And adjusting that is better than losing them altogether. And the motivational consult method, a component of that is assessing capacity, right? It's not just creating well, this is the Rolls Royce and this is what you need to do. It's actually about asking the questions of what can the client physically commit to when it comes to time, when it comes to budget, and all of those things, which effectively led to them, crafting home care prescriptions and treatment plans for clients that were doable in an economic fluctuation because they adjusted them, right? So, they weren't the retail, even though that there might have been some slight fluctuations there, it didn't disappear altogether because they were making adjustments. And then commitments to treatment and service plans, they weren't losing clients altogether because they had adjusted all of that, which then leads into my number 4, which is that those businesses not only had a motivational consult method in place, but they also had a customized treatment plan or a customized service plan model of retention, right? And this was the methodology around mapping people into actual plans. So whether you're hair, skin, or beauty, it doesn't matter. Your clients need continuing care, right? So mapping all of that out in advance and then providing a payment installment option that allowed for those clients to actually pay off their services in smaller financial increments meant that they weren't having to find $300, $400, $500 a month, or in hair it might have been, $400, $500 every 8 weeks when their budgets were all over the place and they were just trying to work out how they were going to make ends meet. So it was a lot easier for them to pay the weekly installments than it was for them to find the bulk payment, right? So as a result, those clinics actually kept their clients engaged well because the financial commitment was broken down. It wasn't demanded at the end of the month or at the end of, close to their hair appointment. So the treatment planning customized, not consultation, custom or CTP and CSP, the customized planning process saved those clients. And the installment payment method saved those clients. It made it easier for them to keep their appointments. Okay, so that was number 4. The final thing that these clinics did differently compared to some of the clinics that I saw that were really suffering a degree of adversity is that they had really strong operating procedures and touch points attached to their appointment management process. Now, in plain and simple language, they had deposit, or they had a security process that made it, you know, not as not, I wouldn't even say not easy for clients to cancel, but it demanded a degree of commitment from them, right? When you're paying for a deposit or you're getting a security from a client and they're complying with that process, it makes them much more likely to actually turn up to those appointments. And the clinics that I saw do really well with that had a very strong process for that. In addition to, they had strong cancellation and no-show policies that they actually implemented if clients were getting a little bit flaky in their attendance. So it wasn't just a policy that lived on a piece of paper. It was actually a policy that they were willing to implement and that they did implement when clients got a little bit rocky. But I suppose when you've got people mapped into plans, service plans and treatment plans, there was less of that flakiness because they were already committed to installment methods of payment. So it was kind of a two-pronged approach to that. In they had the strong cancellation appointment management process. You know, they actually actively engaged clients 72 hours out from their appointments to make sure they were still attending and that there was a security deposit or a credit card security sitting there on file. And there was a multi-touch point method to actually make sure that people showed up. But that was also enhanced by the fact that clients were already committed and had already pretty much paid for their appointment through the installment method. So it was kind of a two-pronged approach there versus clinics. The opposite of that would be clinics that had no security, had no touch point process. They don't confirm appointments. They weren't taking deposits. And as a result of that, they'd come into their week and the whole, if you want to excuse my poor language, but the whole ass end of their appointment books would fall out because they didn't have any of that appointment security and commitment process in place, and they didn't have the touch points in place either to make sure that the client showed up, right? And again, this is not the economy, right? This is just vulnerabilities that already existed in businesses that when shit hit the fan, all of these problems unveiled themselves, right? So 5 things that were different, just to summarize: proactive marketing, mindset, the motivational consult method, CTP, CSP, treatment and service planning with installment method of payment, and strong appointment management processes. They were the 5 things that were evident when I analyze the trends of the people that were coming to me for help. They didn't have these things in place versus the clients that I had already helped that had very robust procedures and structures in place that adopted these methodologies. And the result and the differences in revenue, in profit, in cash flow, in appointment numbers were significant, right? So if you are watching this episode and you are wondering how to build a more robust business, I've just given you 5 clues of things that you need to master to make sure that your appointment books are not feast and famine, to make sure that your cash flow is not up and down, your revenue, all of that stuff stays at a baseline, right? Now, with anything that goes wrong in business, to me, there's always a decision that can be made, right? So there can be a decision to act all Debbie and get all catastrophic and try and find like-minded other Debbies to connect with. You know, that comment that I often make humor of in terms of seen it a million times on industry pages. Is anybody else quiet out there? You know, why would you be looking for other quiet people if that's your problem? And again, it's that trauma bonding experience. I just want to connect with other people that are doing it hard. It makes no sense to me. You know, if you're struggling in business, why the heck would you want to connect with other struggling business owners? That completely defies all logic to me. If I was struggling in business, what I do is I go and connect with people that are bloody killing it because I'm struggling and I want to work out, well, who are the people that are actually doing well right now? What are they doing differently compared to me? And what are some of the things that I can pick up on that might be able to change my situation? So if you are struggling or you've got things that are, not working out for you, don't go and trauma bond with other Debbies, right? Actually go and connect with the people that are friggin' killing it and doing well and get some advice and support from those people. That makes sense, doesn't it? Right? So, I hope this has been helpful for you today, guys. There's definitely some things that you can be doing right now from a business perspective, not just from a consult perspective or from a retention perspective, from a broader business perspective that can really put you in a position where you don't actually have to experience significant fluctuations in cash flow, client numbers, profit. Like you actually don't have to suffer that. Even when economy contracts and business starts to go in a different direction or some pressures start to arise as a result of market fluctuations, you actually don't need to have anything in your business go backwards as a result of that. But what you do need to do is act differently. You need to adopt different strategies. You need to do different things. You need to innovate to make sure that you can actually weather those fluctuations. So I'd love to hear in the comments, guys, from you, what are your thoughts on this? Like, what are the things that come up for you when you hear me talk about some of these strategies or things that you need to do differently? So feel free to hit me up in the comments, guys. Talk about this. I'd love to hear from you.